Okay. Yeah. I still don't really think this looks awesome, but whatever. It looks mild to temperate. Okay. Hey, what's up? So, not much to talk about here that's different from before, and just kind of watching it go. Maybe we'll see something, maybe not. There's enough space here on AMC that I don't really feel like there's a strong need to break out. It looks like we got really stuck under 527. Strangely mechanical in price action here. So 1, 2, new low, 3, double bottom. It looks like 520 right now is holding. This was the first area I thought we might back up to it. Honestly, it's kind of out of the trend now. Not the big one, but it's out of the I mean, I would put it out of the sine wave, the curve. I think it was basically lost right there. So, normally what I would do is I would think about like maybe a 50-50 rise as a possibility. Or just coming back up to catch it. So I think what we may see is if it takes till tomorrow, I mean, I don't know. Tomorrow only lasts till 1, so it's a pretty short day. It's an early day. It's not a lot of price movement. I mean, every day has been kind of the same. Just sort of pump, find a support, maybe move on. Definitely chilled off our indicators now, so that's good. May not be in a bad spot going into Wednesday. I mean, if I'm looking at this as a half-day motion, there's not much to say. It's very, very short, obviously, by comparison. So it looks to me like Wednesday may build out into sort of a similar structure here. I wouldn't be shocked if this kind of just chilled out Wednesday here. Or maybe we get that last leg up. What might be good is to see if we can map out an accelerated creek. Perhaps it's holding. Yeah, it might be. Accelerated support. Bookstore, look at 4-hour flagging. I mean, there can't be that much 4-hour flagging on to my AMC. I don't know what you're talking about. There can't be that much flagging motion. I mean, I'm glad to see, I'm glad to see that we have a red candle. That's actually kind of nice. So I would put it pretty much where I did already. I don't feel like there's anything really new there. If we don't hold this and maintain it, this is where we pull back down to 5, probably Friday, $5. That's a good max pain number. So, yeah, it's not really doing a whole lot here that makes me think it's bullish. It's kind of like constantly double topping. Let me see if this little range, I mean. Let's see, high of 527, 527, 527, 527, 527. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times we hit that 527. That's a lot. Oh, that's a lot. Somebody doesn't want it above 527. We've created a wall. We've got quite a bit of open liquidity down to 5 here locally, so we'll see. I don't know. Generally, I think that what you see in these kind of situations is that whatever the first move out is kind of defines the shape. So you can see here, like the first move out, this third 527 hit caused that drop. We came over top of it, hit 527, slid down. Now we've hit a new low. Again at 520. It doesn't say it's a new low. It looks like a new low on the wick. It must have been 520 and some pennies. Yeah, 515, 516 level. That's over here. I'm not a huge proponent that you have to hold every single support level. So maybe there's a reason you're saying that. I'm not seeing it right this second. It's probably, in retracement terms, probably close to a halfway retracement. 518 is the halfway. 514, 513 is your golden pocket down here. Yeah, 5 is obviously the full retracement. Yeah, maybe. There's a support here at 510. There's another one here at 520. I'm looking backwards at this previous range, and I think support is built at 507. Probably more so than anything else. There's a lot of hits on 507, and then that's where it broke down. So I'm inclined to think that if we were to go down and we needed to get some kind of support low, that 507 may make sense. Sort of where we topped off here as well. 786 retracement. Yeah, I don't know. It just depends on when we get there. Like, if it went down later, for example, if it went down tomorrow, if we somehow came out and then it broke down, I could see us going pretty low, like down to 5 Wednesday. We'd probably still be fine because really that's still within the it's within the range, and it's within this creek jump, so not particularly interesting, but we'll see. You've got a couple different places that a retracement might go. I think 518 seems pretty strong since that's where the preliminary supply was. It was around 518. Seems to be a good number. I mean, on 30-minute, this looks like it's turned down quite a bit. Let's see if on 1 hour. 1 hour is crossed down. Your MACD is kind of compressing a little, but it looks okay. Really, this just looks like it's losing steam as it goes, but I think a lot of that's because of the holiday. Two hour looks really strong still. It's still moving up pretty strong. 4 hours just getting started. It just crossed bullish here this week. And frankly, if you look at this, it really only crossed zero at Monday to Tuesday here. So I feel like the MACD is a strange one because sometimes it's very, I don't know, sometimes it's really telling and sometimes it's like, it doesn't seem to matter at all. The crosses matter on the higher time frames, and then coming back above zero here is a big deal. I find it a little difficult to chart it sometimes because I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be charting. You know, really all this is showing me is the general trend, and then that's where the zero is. It's just crossing it, so it looks good. It's a bullish cross up. Yeah, I'll check out Discord for a minute. Big green candle, high volume, and second 4 hour candle flagging. Good sign. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, that if it's a low volume flag, that's good. But like as in it topped off and then it's just kind of chilling out. Yeah, that's a positive sign. Usually. I still think it would be better to be above 532, but like 518 might be a good support, 520 might be a good support. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The daily looks like it's getting ready to potentially cross over. And that could lead to some really big swings. I mean, the last time we did was right here on Wednesday the 5th. And that resulted in a pretty massive move. It went high. 28% from that point. I'm not going to make a comparison to down here on the daily because it actually crossed. Well, let's go back to where it crossed up. Cross down also leads to pretty big destruction. So we haven't gotten it yet. It's a little bit uncertain. I'm trying to scale this thing. Sure. So it looks to me like that push is good. Yeah, it's hard to argue that this is swinging any other direction right this moment. It definitely looks like it's getting ready to go. So we're on the verge of a major cross here. We may end up having a really big day Wednesday or Friday if this thing can move. This is a daily chart. It's not like, I mean, I guess I could just sit there, but it seemed to me that you would make that move, so. Right. My point is that across to the upside on the MACD usually is pretty positive. It definitely looks like it's going to go. I suppose you could argue that resulting candle is kind of what you'd expect. And they actually look fairly similar. The resulting candle is like a, or two candles is like 20%. 20% move. So let's see what a 20% move would be from where we are currently. Basically goes to 630. So makes sense. So on the daily, that cross up on the MACD has resulted in about 20% swings. So if we can get it crossing up tomorrow or Friday, then yeah, we could have a really big day, go up to 630. It's on the monthly too. Someone just said that. Let me check. It's hard to do this kind of stuff on every time frame with yeah, I mean that already kind of had a result though, I would argue. It crossed in June on the 3rd. See, so it's like right after that big cross up, you've got a massive push to the upside. So on the monthly, mine is still pretty low. It's not near zero, but I could see how it might work its way back up. I mean, the last time we did this, I mean, this part's kind of tricky because I generally think this is kind of that double bottom, and then this is also like a low. So most of the thoughts that I'm thinking right now are that you'd probably come back up and check that. See, like that cross down? It's kind of weird, but there's a little, it's very similar to what we see on the chart when I'm drawing this angle right here. It's like you kind of would expect that maybe the MACD only comes back up to like -14 to start, because it's so low. I mean, just ugly chart. I mean, and to me, it's not a weird thing, like, to think that this might come up and come back down again. Let's be real. I mean, we talk about this all the time, but like, if this went up towards November and then came back down, it's not like that unusual. It would just be like our general idea from earlier, like this is probably going to come up and cross over some levels. It may never look quite like this. You may have this kind of elevated rise where you get kind of a quote-unquote double bottom of sorts while it's rising, just like this one did. And I think that's sort of what I would expect. It's like any kind of a move up and down here probably generate some kind of a massive divergence in MACD. That's my initial thought. But monthly is a little odd for me because AMC's not that old. So when I get to monthly, I start thinking too hard about it. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe better to use something like weekly. Just because AMC's chart, again, it's not really that old. So there's only, what, 20, I mean, it's been around since 2000 and, when was it, 2016 or 13? I can't remember. Was it 2015? It's 2013, but really it's like December, so That's 10 years. So you have 120 points of, or 120 bars then. That's not a lot of bars. 10 years times 12 months. So it's, I mean, roughly. I'm not positive that's exactly the right number, but it might be a little more than that, right? But I like the weekly a little better because there's just more information. If I were just looking at a 120 some odd bar chart, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know if there's enough here. You know, this has the same vibe as back here. There's a definite strong divergence going up. Until you get to the big cross, there's no major blow up moment. So where is that? I don't know. Anything can happen. Part of me imagines that we're in this kind of motif right now. I know it sounds weird, but I have this feeling that we're going up and we're going to make that other push. And it's kind of like what we did back in August of 2020. Other people are going to say, no, it's just going to cross up. But again, like looking backwards, this did kind of cross up here. It went slightly above. And I really could imagine that happening right here. It's like slow-mo, but having like a push up once, backing up, you know, finding support, and then pushing back up again and going a little higher. I know I say a lot of things that just kind of support my thesis already, so you take that with a grain of salt. But I genuinely think that that might be the case here. Like, we may be looking at this as if it's about to break up and just go. In reality, if you look at MACD on monthly and weekly, it kind of looks more like this area, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, except that maybe this is a similar like falling S-curve setup. I don't know why else you would pick that area, but so it could be like here. This makes more sense to me. So we've already got the first up thrust. We bottomed and we did a big run up. We're coming back down and we're kind of building a support, and then we get another run up. And this is sort of what I was talking about earlier in the stream. I probably erased it all, but having a move up that gets you to above a point where you're going to have like 6 as a distribution point, and then kind of building a bottom below 6 like we did back here. All of that's important because it's all about jumping over creeks. Like locally, that's what this did. This is a double up thrust through a creek body. So when you go back and you look, you're like, oh yeah, it went, you know, it went above that creek and then pushed up and kind of settled back through it. Hard to unsee that once you see it. And I feel like we may be in a similar spot. Like this breakdown right here looks very similar, even in the same location, I would say. So I would imagine that is the right creek here. And that you're probably going to coast through it in a similar way. So I suspect that we may actually be experiencing that right now. You can't see it. It's a similar area of the chart too, but it stands to reason that might be what we're seeing right here. It's that push up, pull back, and then another push up. And this does reinforce the idea that I had earlier that you're going to basically create a new top to retest that higher creek. This looks really similar in some ways. Yeah. So I might be right about that after all. It makes sense to me because, again, that's what the M cross does, is it jumps one, but it creates another. It's always the same. And then you drop low, usually to cross the creek. In this case, it's really playing more to a range. But the concepts we were talking about earlier today, it's the same idea, you know. If 6 becomes like a sticking point for us, you can see how this could go to like 3 and then like reject at 6 and then go low, maybe even back to the bottom. And then you can get a bigger jump, you know, and then you start a new M cross, which is really all this is. It's just on the rise. That's what I've been seeing. Well, let's check one more thing. Let's try this out. Because it might be right. I would try one more thing with that big picture. So I'm not going to be able to get this perfect, but I'm just going to doodle it really fast. Yeah, I mean, it follows pretty well. Maybe more of a question of timing, I guess, above all else, but it does work. And then this gives you a jump over that creek, just like this did. It gives you a jump over the 50% marker. It gives you an M cross. And then you basically buy back down, check the creek. And if it's good, you can continue back to the upside. And this is probably where you see it hit that marker we've been talking about in like the 90s or something. I keep getting rid of that line. I need to make sure it's the right one though, because I think it's 6942, because I have used this for a couple things and I don't want to pick a different one. Oh wait, how do I know it's the right one? I don't know. I think it's the wrong one. I think it's 6942. And you might think I'm a little crazy, but a long time ago, I made an argument about 61 up here being the actual target, not 72, although I don't think it matters too much. Yeah. So this would be like a distribution right up top. This is in June of 2025, right up top at 72. And then you'd come back down through that area right here. And you basically would have like another possible distribution on your hands. This looks right to me. The only thing that may be different is, and we'd have to wait and see, is this guy. A lot of times we kind of expect it's going to be the same, but it just depends on where this is. This may not actually be as bullish looking as this was, just based on where things are set up. It's hard to say. That actually looks right though. And then if I put it's really no different than like this guy from earlier. You can see the same exact thing. I drew on the screen earlier, right here. So if you're like, man, you're doing a lot of this macro stuff, how do you know it's right? It's all the same. I mean, again, this is basically what I had on the screen earlier. It's almost exactly the same. It's right here. So if you want to just check my work and say, like, are you being consistent? Yeah. Bigger difference is that I drew this like as if it were going to break out later. I think this is probably the target though, so the rest of this is really just timing, you know. There's a lot of ways to do timing, so I think I've drawn this particular cross trend like a million times, and I still don't really know for a fact that I've got it 100% correct. There's just a lot of different ways to do it, so it's a tough one. I mean, it could be it. So yeah, it would basically hit the second high and then retreat real low. And it would basically be like a double bottom. And then you could build out from there a much, much larger move. Three is a stretch. I don't think it's a stretch. Like, this is the way that AMC traded almost exactly in the past. There's nothing to say you can't change, but it would be like AMC to kind of destroy itself going into November and then have a big move. But who knows? Just because something happened like that in the past doesn't mean it happens in the future. I can just see that the creeks are built much the same, so I think that's kind of interesting, to say the least. Maybe it builds out higher. It's possible. If you build out higher, it'd be like building out along 6 again and then maybe dipping down just to get the gap fill and making a higher low. But yeah, it is different. We've also come really low in reverse split. But the big picture here is that there's still a floor here. You know, the more you add to this, the more it might make sense that we would spend a lot of time trading low. And would not put it past an operator to have 2 major buy-ins and then sell it down really, really low again, or try to sell it down low. The question is spring or LPS. Once you got up here, this does not have to make a new low. If you go back to this first buy down, sell down, it could have just made an LPS and then advanced. And I do think that's a possibility. So like, why coffee in range doesn't have to make a new low. It could just be a retracement level and then go back up. So there's always a chance. But when I look at this creek that's coming down, I think it's very low. And I think that the chances of it coming down and not hitting that creek are pretty much slim to none after double topping. So that's where I'm at. So if we made this move into early July and it just happens to be correct and it goes up, I think it's going to be a slide into August, an ugly slide. We'll see what happens at 6. It seems pretty likely to me. Let's see if we can get up to like, what were we saying, 15 or 16 or 18. Those are all the numbers in between these little areas. We came down again. We can manage with 350. That gives you a 1618 extension. We could do that move. I want to say it was actually a much higher extension back here. It was like a 2618. But I digress. I think the general principle of coming back up to this top, to me, is straightforward. Volcano shape, mountain shape, U shape. It's always the same on these bottoms. So I'm of the opinion that this is probably what happens. We could do the old we could do the old cross trend thingamabob. We could do that. It's probably going to give you the same answer. Whoa, what do you know? It's the same thing. Yeah, of course it is. You're such a jerk, Booksy. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, y'all. I don't think we're going to go past... I don't think we're going to go past it. I think it's going to 89 or 88 or something. I don't know what's going to happen after that, but I think that there's going to be another big cool-off period. Probably come back down to like the 10s or something. Trade that bottom. Because that's the move, right? And however much you might want it to continue, like, I really genuinely think that's it. And I don't know if it's going to do anything else ever again. If people get it up there, they're going to be getting out of the play and probably distributing 2025 into 2027 or something. After that point, it's probably just a matter of like macro creek checks, kind of like what we did here, where we came way back down. We would probably end up coming way back down, like over here. Ooh, that looks good. That's a slick chart. Meaning like it's very tight, compact. Yeah, I would imagine at this point it distributes at 50s and then comes all the way back down to 6. Again. I just, that's what I think would happen. I think it'd be like a mini version of what happened here, basically. And then who knows? After that, it's anybody's guess. That's way too far in the future. We shouldn't go that far. Then it goes up to 1900. I don't know. I mean, it's I guess it's possible. Really, at that point, you can see 212. That's the full length. That goes back to this top. That's kind of interesting. So that the fib setup that I just did would take you back to, it'd be like an upward trend here. That could potentially take you back up to 212. And man, that actually makes a lot of sense because then you'd have another big cross here, huge one, and like another iteration of the same thing all over again. Pump and dump for life till 2029 or something. Some macro uptrend. Yep. I could see that. Because, I mean, from my point of view, like, that's the only vantage point that I can see. And honestly, at this point, you could easily have it do the same thing and, like, distribute, you know? It just as easily could be a massive cat ear where it does it again and you're like, what? But it does it again and it does the same kind of patterning again on the same marker, comes lower, and then again it would do like a retracement and then it would drop the low. And you'd end up with what we essentially see in cat ears, which is a repeated iteration of the same things over and over again. One ear, two flat ear, one ear, two flat ear. So it'd be like ear one, flat ear one, flat ear one, flat ear. And then it just back down to the bottom. And this just becomes a floor. It may be that this is set up around like debt maturities. One of the debt maturities, 2029. I know they've got some that are next year. Actually, you know, if this were the case, what you would see is that on the next iteration, it would go to the halfway point. So it would like compress upward. So you'd end up with a, it's kind of strange to think about, but you may end up with like a compression. Yeah, right there. It's pretty nice. But at that point, people will say it's a giant wedge. Who knows? Any number of things could happen then. You basically got a huge cat ear. Makes sense. It makes too much sense. It actually hurts my brain. What a way to shake people out if they stayed in the play. Just continually doing that, like, over the next 4 years. Basically keeping the price at like 10. But think about it this way, because opportunity is its own mistress, you know? And like, if you had, let's just think about it this way. If you had a, let's say you had $100 or something, right? And you were like, I want to trade $100 over the next 4 years. With the right options, you could be playing this and easily make millions. I mean, I'm not saying like it's easy, but I'm just saying easily if you know the numbers. If you knew the numbers ahead of time, you'd be like, yeah, we could turn that into millions of bucks. So it might be good to just kind of observe this as a way of understanding the waves, as it were, and building upon that momentum. What about the waves, Booksy? Well, that's where things might get a little bit tricky, because in theory, this is how long that wave would take, you know? It would take till 2025 or 2026. And I couldn't really make a stronger case than just to say, yeah, that's about right. But you'll notice that this actually comes down and hits this marker earlier. So if you think about this as like a double tap on that line, there's actually a sort of a possible double tap there as well. It might even happen where you get this kind of like, instead of it being kind of like it was here, you actually get a second extension up, you know? And when you look at it that way, it's like, oh, it's just like a turned around version of it. I think it's a possibility that we actually see something like that. And maybe it doesn't do exactly what it did the first time, which is just straight up cat ear distribution. Maybe there's a second move that actually goes higher to like 109 or something, you know, or to the top of this range, because you got two ranges there. I mean, you got a top and a bottom. Ooh. Yeah, it might just take an opportunity to go back and check the original opening price. It's a strong chart. It tracks, so really well, actually. I don't know about the rest of it, but this is certainly, the first part seems about right to me. I knew we'd come back. I knew there needed to be a wave. I knew it would need to be a certain kind of wave over a certain amount of time. So yeah. It doesn't have to be perfect to be right. It can be fairly loose. And hey, man, you might look at something like this and say, I don't know how that could possibly happen, but I'm also of the opinion that, like, this is essentially just working out what we already see as the trading pattern on AMC. Like, this isn't really that big of a deal in some ways, because it's like, we've already seen this happen. This happened over here, like on that breakdown and that pushback up. It just didn't ever come as high in August, and then it started to macro I mean, if you look at it closely, it's almost exactly the same. It's actually kind of freaky the way I'm doing this, because yeah, if you just observe like the trading pattern of AMC as a this is never going to work. It's like never going to happen. You guys are like, so it's basically in purgatory is what you're saying, Booksy. We're never going to get out of here. Kind of. It's complex, but that double bottom rise up looks a lot like March. You've got a huge sell down that goes low. Just like in March, you've got a buy back out that comes back up, makes you think it's going to explode. It does blow up. It doesn't have a big move, but it never comes back above the place that you sort of started that falling S-curve. That would be back here. That's what happened in August. It gets trapped. That would be the same as us like making a secondary push and then selling down and basically starting like a long form, you know, curve out. It just bottoms out around 6 or 7 over time. Just slow and painful death down here. As an entertainment company, you'd want to see AMC make some really big changes. So from your very first video. Oh, very cool. Yeah, they definitely can change and adapt, but the main thing about this type of stuff is that you're looking at it as a pattern of behavior. So any kind of iteration, small or large, can be used. It just has to be put into the right context, and it has to make sense. It has to be sensible. One of the problems that we often have is it's not very sensible. Like if it goes completely against the grain of everything we've seen, then I don't really feel like it makes sense. So this one to me is essentially like a repetition of what we've already seen here in previous versions of the same exact thing. This one just didn't ever really advance very far, you know. And this one also, though it did go up in the end, does have that cross trend, but it's very very low, like low rising right here. There's really no other one to speak of. Maybe this guy. I made this case on GME a while back, but there's a one right in the middle of the cat ears that suggests that you would go back to that trend. So potentially it's like the same thing presently. It's just doing it a slightly different way. Anyways, I like this chart though. This is a good one. I'm going to save it. It's very similar to the other macro chart I made earlier. So I'm not sure why I'm doing 2 macro charts in one day, but we'll just go 1. I don't know. There's another one that we did earlier. This one is pretty similar. Almost the exact same results in a similar time frame. So yeah. The one thing that kind of maybe people wouldn't want to see is that concept of like it taking like a long time to get to where it needs to get to. But I don't control that. So we didn't watch much of the price action. I was watching the numbers. There wasn't much change. So it's kind of a boring end of the day, and maybe that's all right, you know. Earlier I had drawn a triangle. I don't know what happened to it. It's gone now. I might have accidentally deleted it. It was just based on this cross, so so let's see. Going into tomorrow, it looks to me like it's very weak. Like it had a really weak cross of that creek. I wouldn't be surprised if it did some shenanigans, but it is over it. It looks like it closed over it, so to me I say weak because it's pretty low volume and there's not really any follow through to talk about. It just kind of went up a little bit and then sagged back through it. It does look like it closed right on top of it, so to be fair, it could be a bull flag. What do I think it is? I think it's probably an S curve. It could be shallow, but this to me reminds me more of like an S curve where it's like pushing a creek outward and then we're going to actually build out lower. So this happens when it's like not quite ready to go, but it's like making advances. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some kind of a spring action early Wednesday. Frankly, with how short the day is, we probably could see it all happen. Nothing happen tomorrow, just kind of coast here. But this is how I would read it for the most part. So we'll see. Can always reverse. And if it's shallow, that just means that it may not come that low. It may only go down back to like 519 or something. But it did hold support, so that's good. It held above 520. There's nothing really else to say about AMC right now. It had to back up. I don't like that it rejected around 532. And I've been talking about that as a kind of danger zone. It's not fear-based. It's like a shelf. And you can't quite get away from the fact that if you don't advance there, you don't really have a move. So I want to see it push. The most important level that we've had, in my opinion, was back down here. Like this was super important for us to build a retest and move out. So I'm still in like a happy place with AMC unless it starts breaking stuff. Going into tomorrow, GME, y'all. It's the same thing. I mean, it like kind of weakly broke. It looks like it closed beneath it. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Not everything I draw is perfect, but I'm pretty confident that's the right margin. And let me see. Maybe this has a reason. Yeah. All right. Well, there's a chance. There's a chance this could be a floor. It's on a support level, I think. 2392. I think it could make it. It looks like it's going to have to re-break. Frankly, it looks like it came out, failed in kind of a wedge format, failed at really right where I said it needed to hold. We never filled the gap, and then it came down and lost the other creek. So everything about the ending was definitely intending it to look kind of bearish. It's an M shape. It's finished. Right here, you can see the clear and evident waveform. So what does that mean, Booksy? Well, could mean a couple things. So the first thing I look at is what did that wave cross? Like what was going on right here? On RSI, it's going to look a little different than on price action, because on an RSI, it sort of looks like it already made the retracement. It actually went back to that level already. It looks like it could find support right now. It doesn't have to go any lower. Price action wise, I think that lower cross here is a little debatable. It might be sort of a phantom creek. It's like this thing. Because I'm thinking back to what we were doing before, and we were building out this little wall. So I said phantom creek like that's some real thing. But what I mean is that it's sort of like a creek that doesn't really have the tops in mind. So this was built out going downward here. And then it looks to me like this might just be like that push across. So that particular resistance that was built out, in addition, of course, to crossing back up over 2364, which is an important level. So I think what we've got is sufficient. I think 2364 possible support area. If it breaks below 2364, we'd have to like revisit that idea that I just kind of put out, which is maybe there's a lower hit, and it's pretty low. It's not 100% evident exactly where it is, but I think it's here. So it could come down quite a bit. With max pain at 23, it's not hard to imagine it coasting down into this pocket, though it may change. Maybe it already changed. So talk about a crappy call out. So this didn't even like bother to advance. I think what's sort of strange about these sort of movements to me is always watching from a helicopter point of view. Like, you've got the target in mind, you kind of see it. Maybe this doesn't hit till Wednesday, in which case I'm not wrong, but it didn't even advance in the way that you would expect it to. It didn't advance over these particular tops. So there were two tops here that I was looking for, and this just has to do with what I'll just call slingshot theory, if you want to call it that, which is that when you come down, you're creating little ledges, and these end up being build-outs for like 50-50 moves back to the upside. Retroactively, we see this all over the place. Is it easy to kind of find it and confirm it? Probably not. But like this 50-50 would set up below the support so you can get back up to the previous top. So it's creating like a halfway point as you're working your way down so that when you come back out, you've got that support. But everything about this just looked kind of wonky end of day. This is weird. A lot of retests. So yeah, it may be okay because this is a creek jump and a push back up. So it looks like SOS, local SOS for this tiny little guy, and then a backup. And then maybe it's going back up, but could be a double top. This is a hard one to see. It's really small. Yeah, to me it just looks like the inversion just was really weak. Maybe it's a holiday thing, but you've got the inversion here. Could have been a inverted like head and shoulder motion. It just doesn't seem like it's quite committed to it. So we'll see. We may end up be like a down she goes kind of thing. And again, it kind of rejected at 202, which isn't overly positive. So normally what I would do in this situation is just say, hey, if it's a cat ear and it's rejecting and it's not coming back up and it can't regain that momentum wave that was happening here, trying to take off in the beginning, you either slingshot to it or you crash. And if you crash, you're going to go low in order to get across whatever creek is you're trying to cross. So we didn't even get to the creek. We didn't make it there. It's way up above us. It's over 202. So much for that, you know. It's just a failure to advance. There's not much else I could say about it. Other than I'm wrong. I was wrong. I still think the waveform looks good from the standpoint of a trend. That part doesn't really make me doubt much. It would suggest that sometime by Friday you might be up at 205s to this top area. And that's not even that confusing to me. I think I measured it and 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 measured it. And I still think that's correct. But sometimes you leave a trend. So it's like, if eventually it's not going to be right, you know, like eventually it's going to stop working. We might be at that point. It's worked like 3 or 4 times already, but if it doesn't work this time, it doesn't work this time. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in pre-market after hours. No, I'm happy with MPW. There's nothing about this that's bad to me. Right now, what I want to see is a range that's healthy, that's like a bottom. Because you don't bring the stock low like this to a golden pocket just to get the gap. You would do it to trade as low as you possibly can before you reverse. So what's happened on MPW is fairly simple. It's gone from accelerating creeks to outward facing ones. The only problem with that is that you now have to contend with the fact that some of these are very high. So they're going to be a while before we can see them. I do believe they'll hit and they'll provide support and resistance on a way back out. But until then, there's not much you can do except say, like, I don't know, estimate. Really, in this one, it might even just say it's the same thing. Just make it simpler. Just use that. So it's gone from accelerating to working out now, working outwardly. So I still think that's positive. I haven't redrawn my chart, but obviously this isn't the bottom. So you would take this and apply it low, possibly even lower, just depending on what happens, you know. I think that's fair. And you see if it works out. You know, you got to build out in truth. You can't just take exactly what you want to happen. You just got to keep working on it. I'm not trying to catch a falling knife here. My goal is to accumulate longer positions, not anything else. So, yeah, so anywho. So what started right here presently was that we had a pretty big reaction, but then it got like pinned on a bottom. So it is wise if you're looking at MPW to kind of build it out a little more. Once the creeks have been jumped, I wouldn't really mess with it too much. What I would do instead is look at what's the next thing, you know, and just kind of go for the next best thing. Because this is probably the big one right here. Usually it looks like the tops of the cat ears. And we didn't jump that, so it just kind of rested underneath it. I mean, it's a consolidation. We made higher lows. There's nothing stopping this from breaking down again. Especially if it pushes up again higher and then dumps. We got gaps all the way back up. So I'm not going to worry about that either. But if I were to look at this and just say, like, all right, let's say that's a auto reaction or selling climax auto reaction. This is kind of your phase B. This is a potential bottom, and then you would have a either an SOS with a backup or a UT. So it's at a point of contention. So if it's an SOS with a backup, you're probably going to see it start advancing and leaving. And it could form a larger range for sure. This is a very small time frame. So you don't really want to count on Wyckoff too much when you're looking at micro ranges. If it distributes, my thought is it's probably going to do this Wednesday, maybe even a Friday, and go ahead and go low. I don't think it's going to go lower than 387. I guess I marked off 384, so that's a possibility. So this could be like a final S-curve build out here, where it's like widening before the turn. M1, M2, and then creek. There is a way to mess with this. Hang on. You go from here to here. Yeah, so if this breaks down, I think you're going to head to, as best you can, you're going to head to this creek. And that should be it. This looks like a pretty completed M that's worked out. And then you would get like a violent reaction back to the top here. That would be an actual, like a really strong auto reaction to the whole thing. we'll see. Anything else is kind of more or less bullish, I suppose. More bullish than not. I don't track Doge, no. Yeah, I don't know about that. AMC is a stock that has a lot of potential for big moves, but it's also still a broken stock. I mean, it's got a lot of problems, and the debt is a huge deal. So if they can't figure out how to fix the debt problem, they're just running on fumes. It's hard to make a case that things can't come back down when you're running on fumes as a company. I don't believe there's any kind of sufficient floor. And I think we've shown over the last 3 years that every floor that we think we have can be broken. So that's the stance I'm going to take. I wonder if this is a creek. It might be. Like that. Somebody asked about something, SPCE, space, the final frontier. I'll check it out. I'll do a brief overview. Is this SpaceX? Oh, it's Virgin. Ugh. Yeah, what do you want to know about this? What do you want to know about it? Just curious. Yeah, I would. You can push debt back, and as long as you're able to raise capital. But how has he been raising capital? They don't care. They get to liquidate their assets and take everything they're worth. You know, at the end of the day, if AMC can't pay its debts, they're going to just take it from them. They're just going to sell everything they have and make as much money as they can. And they pay a lot on leases, AMC does. So I'm not saying that they wouldn't, I'm not saying someone wouldn't profit from extending the debt. I'm just saying that companies go bankrupt all the time. Like eventually it catches up to them. No, they have assets. They have movie theaters. They still have the structures. Yeah, their land is leased. They don't lease all their equipment and everything that they own inside the buildings. Not all that stuff is leased. Does this look really bad? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't look good. Well, I don't know why I would look at this and say it looks good. I can't really tell what's happening on the monthly. There might have been like reverse or splits or something. I don't know. But to me, it looks like it's in a distribution cycle. It's in a markdown phase, and it hasn't found a bottom yet. It's an S-curve. Yeah. The problem with these kinds of things is I'll say that, and then like the next week it'll explode. And somebody has like insider information, and they're telling people, and then, but a lot of that stuff is really truly pump and dump. There's a long-standing resistance support back here. I think that's probably the best thing that it has. So if I were looking at this from a like a waveform analysis, I would definitely use this marker. And it's low. So I think this thing could go down to like $3 pretty easy. Yeah, there's a platform right here at 60. I mean, I don't know how much it's worth, so it might be different than something else. So what it has going for it is it's positive. It's kind of positive that this is going into way oversold territory on the weekly. You know, it's basically going parabolic down, which usually results in a big move, but you're trying to catch a knife at that point. I don't see why it wouldn't go down to this particular creek, this resistance, which is really low. It's at like 350. So for me, it's like it could be in like kind of the final stages of a sell-off, like this heavy volume below 14. I just don't know where it stops, you know. I have a way that I do things, and it's not always right, but I would look at that original support, and that early sign of weakness over here when it dropped low. It's not the only thing you can look at. It's just one of many, but when I do that and I check out the measurements, it feels like pretty close to right to me. So I think there's a possibility this continues to drop until like 330. If it were to jump this outer trend with some strength, I might buy in, you know, because it's a long form wedge at some point in the future. There's probably another one back here you could use. Maybe that guy. Again, it's still below it, so way below it. What's this guy? The Virgin Galactic guy. He's now doing like stuff to space or something. Trips to space. Privatized space race. Richard Branson, yeah. I mean, if you ask me, like the people who, this is a wedge breakdown. Ugh, it's ugly, dude. I just think probably people don't have confidence in him. Take it into penny stock territory until they hear something. I wouldn't touch it. I mean, there's obviously you could always argue there's some kind of potential here, but just the idea of this being volatile might be attractive because it might have some really volatile moves back up at some point on like news releases. But unless you're willing to like sink tons of money into this to buy shares over time, the next buy-in price would be like $3 or something, more than likely. I guess you could just short it until that time. You never know. He might announce the first successful space flight, and then it'll just rocket, no pun intended, back up or something to the support or resistance. But at that point, it's like, well, what am I waiting for, you know? Like, I just don't know what the point would be. You might as well be in like a pharmaceutical or something, you know? At that point, you're just waiting for news. I feel the same when people ask me about AMC now. I'm like, gosh, this is like taking me back to like the stock twits days. People just pumping and dumping, like, where's the news? Where's the news? It's like, what is this? We need a catalyst. It's like, okay. Sad. Sad. Anyways, look, the one thing I think it has going for it, if you're interested in knowing, is just, for me, it's like that. It's way oversold. And it does look like it's going down parabolically. So usually there's a very strong reaction when something like that happens, as long as it doesn't go bankrupt. I think it might be as low as 3 before that happens. Otherwise, I'm not really seeing it as a very good opportunity, personally. There's just too much risk. Well, I think that's that for today. Tomorrow's going to be a short day, so bring your beach balls, I guess, and we'll just enjoy the day for whatever it's worth. If you're here, I'll be here. If not, have a good holiday break. If you're not American, pretend to be an American. Go have some cookout with your buddies. I don't know. The market's not going to be open for you regardless, so not the U.S. market. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes tomorrow. Maybe just kind of a poopy day. So don't say poopy, Bugsy. It's gross. But it might be, it might be not the greatest. Could be kind of boring tomorrow. Just a setup day. It'd be hilarious if tomorrow was like the big day. Went up to 6 or something. Anywho. Alright, guys. I'm going to head out. Hope you guys have a good one.